Hello and welcome to Lechem Panim. I'm your host, Pastor Cameron Ury, and today's message is entitled Standing in the Gap. It comes from the account given to us in Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 14. We'll start at verse 9. It says, "And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you." But Moses implored the Lord his God, and skipping ahead, and the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people. Today, of course, is the National Day of Prayer, and for Christians, it's a time to gather together and collectively intercede before the Lord on behalf of our families, our nation, and the world. Because in every true Christian's heart, there burns this desire to see our nation healed and restored by the all-powerful hand of God. Now, one of the most unique aspects of the Christian faith is that God both hears and answers our prayers, not based on any selfish need on his part or because he needs our worship or praise, but rather simply because he loves us. He longs to meet our needs. He longs to take us under his wing and to make us his own. And though God's judgment on sin is very real, he will always deal graciously with those who cry out earnestly to him. In the 32nd chapter of the book of Exodus, Israel sinned by making for themselves a golden calf to worship. They had broken the law of God that was given to them, and they engaged in all kinds of horrific, heinous acts under the very mountain where the presence of God had come down to meet them in a special way and to enter further into a relationship with them. And so God, he is grieved, and his righteous anger is kindled at their having so quickly turned from him and his way. And therefore he tells Moses, step aside so that he might consume them. But Moses, instead, he casts himself upon the mercy of God and intercedes on Israel's behalf. He implores God to turn from his burning anger and to relent from this disaster. And what's incredible is that God does. He listens to Moses and he shows mercy instead of judgment. And so Moses became the mediator who stood in the gap on behalf of the people of Israel and helped mend the relationship between them and God. Now, many of us know this story well, but what should challenge us, I think, the most, especially on this National Day of Prayer, is that God is still just as willing to respond to our prayers as he was then to the prayer of Moses. In the courtroom of God, he will still hear our testimony and will often allow his sentence to be changed if and when we cry out to him. The question then becomes, are we as Christians being faithful to stand in the gap on behalf of our family, our friends, our country, and the world? Are we being faithful to stand in the gap for those around us who are destined for the fire of the judgment of God? Or are we silent? We don't need to ask if God's will is to show mercy in any given situation or to any given people. The answer is always yes. If God was willing to have compassion on and turn away his destruction from people like the Ninevites in and through the ministry of Jonah, we can know that he wills to do the same for us as a country and for each and every individual as well. And therefore we ought to be faithful to stand in the gap and to offer up our intercession. Let us do that.